Good morning, everyone. Sara Khakl here from Atlanta Divorce Law Group, joined by our very own managing partner, Shawna Woods. And today, Shawna and I are going to discuss a topic that is relevantly new to the family law issues that we discuss, which is how is the COVID-19 vaccine for children affecting parents' rights to make medical decisions for their children? Before we kind of get into the different scenarios of the COVID-19 vaccine and parents' choice to vaccinate their children, I first wanted Shawna to discuss a little bit about the medical decision-making right over our children in general, and how this is one of the major rights parents negotiate, sometimes fight over, sometimes collaborate on in the divorce process. So Shawna, set the foundation for us, please.
Absolutely. Well, when you have a couple who are divorced or going through a divorce, one of the things that we often talk about is the fact that both are going to share joint legal custody. And joint legal custody is really important because it gives both parents access to these medical records. It gives them access to school records. And one of the important parts of sharing joint legal custody is that the law requires both parents to talk to each other and try to come up with a resolution if they don't agree on one of the four major areas. And the area that we're talking about specifically today is the medical decision-making power. And that means that basically if you can't agree after a good faith discussion, then someone has to be designated that final decision maker. And we are seeing that it is coming to fruition or coming to light that some of these are really hard when you have vehement disagreements about what to do in some medical situations.
And quite frankly, it's a family to by family case basis on which decision making right over your children is going to cause the most sticky of them all. In a standard typical family where the children do not have special needs, the medical decision making power may or may not be that big of a deal. Usually we agree that, hey, there's certain vaccines our children have to get to go to school. They need their annual checkup. But the COVID vaccine, has caused some sense of polarity in, the world we live in, the culture we live in now. Now it's readily available to everybody. And the American I'm crushing the name. It's American Academy of Pediatrics. They have actually come out and recommended the COVID-19 vaccine to children 5 years and over, but not all parents feel comfortable vaccinating their children. So what's interesting is before this vaccine gets mandated to schools or at any other level, how do we think this is actually going to play out amongst families who are in disagreement over it? Shawna, this is a new area of an issue. So I guess what best we can do for our clients is rely on the past issues, such as vaccines in general. What have you seen the courts do, specifically here in Georgia, where we are, when parents do not agree, ex-spouses do not agree on vaccinating their children?
I do like the distinction that you were making in particular about this not being a mandated vaccine to go to school, or that it's sort of, obviously it's very new, right? And a lot of people have some hesitation, and I think the courts are going to appreciate that. But as it goes along, I think that we do look to what the courts have done in the past. And I know I've had cases myself in particular where someone who did not believe in vaccines, the court said they were specifically not going to give them final decision-making power on medical. And this particular court said he remembered when polio was eradicated and how the vaccines had played a huge part in that. And so the courts can really look at this, take the history of the vaccines, and make these decisions on who they feel is making the most educated and best decision for their children. And that's not to say that people who are saying they don't want their children to have the COVID vaccine are not, because we haven't reached that point in Georgia yet. I think the biggest part we're having is if one person has education and one person has medical with the COVID vaccine, if they're going to be required to go to school, we're going to see an interplay on how that plays out probably sooner rather than later.
I mean, I have to tell you, when I took my 3 children to get their annual checkup, our pediatrician was very adamant about getting our children vaccinated. He kept pushing it and pushing it. I've never actually felt pushed by a doctor to make a medical decision for my children. He kept citing the American Academy of Pediatrics and how they recommend it. My husband and I kept pushing for, give us some data, give us some information, tell us what the statistics are. And he wasn't able to provide that. And I'm not saying everybody should make a decision based on what we did, but we made a decision of wait to find more, learn more, get more data, understand it more. We feel like live in a time of great confusion. But I did have a moment where I felt very grateful that Hisham and I were on the same page about this, which is we're not yet comfortable making this decision, and we will want some years to go by to see how this vaccine is playing out before we make that decision. I also have very dear friends that were very comfortable making that decision. I guess my concern is, and the reason I wanted for you and I to have this conversation is, I am thinking about that parent who doesn't have the medical decision-making right and sees the other parents make a decision on the vaccine who has the medical decision-making right. If they don't agree, could there be a modification based on the child not getting vaccinated or vaccinated? So in my instance, if Hisham and I were co-parenting as ex-spouses and I didn't want to vaccinate the children, I had the medical decision-making right, he didn't, could he go and modify based on this?
I'm not going to say that I think that's enough to get you in the door to say, I want to modify, because the courts, or either you've come to an agreement to say who should have that final decision-making power, or the courts have appointed it to you. And it's not the court's place to come in and second judge your final decision-making power. What we're really looking for is, did they discuss it with you? Did you have a good faith discussion? Did you guys really sit down and say, this is why I feel this way? Did you hear the other person out? So I don't think it's based on a decision to get the vaccine or not get the vaccine. It's more based on that decision of having those good faith negotiations between parents before that final decision-making power is made. So, I personally think we're going to pull somebody's final decision-making power based on this one vaccination. That could be used, though, if there is a pattern of behavior that shows that you are not communicating with the other parent.
Or a pattern of behavior where it shows that one parent is just neglectful of the child's medical needs. It is, I think, one thing that is, parents have, sometimes we have clients that have this fear of, if I believe this and I don't want to get my child vaccinated for this COVID vaccine, my spouse, could he use this as me being neglectful towards the child? And to echo your sentiment, is there a pattern of behavior where you're not taking the child to medical appointments, not getting the child the medical attention they need? It is hard to say that this one thing would sway the courts to say there's medical neglect, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It always is a cumulus when you at when a child is being taken care of, right? It's not a one-off issue for the courts, nor it should be a one-off issue for the parents. I think it is a really hard, I'm really glad I don't have to personally make that decision, because I do think it's a very hard decision to make. And we want to support each and every parent's decision at this point in time.
Do you think that if the one parent is able to communicate with the other parent regarding getting vaccinated, they would be able to avoid court? Give us some tools, some tips on how they can avoid court altogether for the medical decision-making rights.
Well, not just with the vaccine, but I would say with any final decision that you're going to be making, reach out to the other parent and say, here's a decision that I think that we need to talk about. Here's what I'm thinking. I would, for instance, if I was the person who wanted to get my child vaccinated, I feel that they should get vaccinated. Here's what I've read on my own. What do you think? That part in the end that I said is a really important part, and not just to do it as a performance, but to really ask, what do you think? Let me engage in this with you. And simply because you engage doesn't mean you're going to reach an agreement, but really going in there trying to reach an agreement and hearing the other person's side. And then I would have the discussion in person if you're able to. Some people are not able to communicate in person with their ex-spouse, but I would reiterate it in maybe an email, or if you're using Our Family Wizard, through Our Family Wizard, and say, here's what I felt, here's what I heard you say. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you acknowledge what you've heard them say. And here's what I think I'm going to do. Do you have anything else to say? And then once you've made that decision, just go ahead and say, I thank you for your input. It was really important for me to hear that. And then go ahead and make the decision. And they may change your mind. They may not. But it's that really open discussion that the courts are looking for.
So there's two things you said that I think are really important key takeaways for anybody that's listening to this and hoping to get some advice out of it is A, don't make your communication a performance with your spouse, with your co-parent. Make it genuine, make it authentic, make it in good faith. That's what the courts are looking for, that it was in good faith attempt to actually co-parent and make these decisions together. The second thing that you said that's also really important is document the good faith attempts, so that if this thing does escalate where you do need to get the courts involved, you do need to consider a modification, you can actually show your good faith attempts to communicate. Now, Shawna, let's say we do get escalated to the point where we feel that this not getting the child vaccinated or not getting the child vaccinated is a cumulus of many other things that has shown neglect towards a child or lack of proper medical decision making. What does modification look like? Lay the foundation for our modification options.
So that kind of modification does have to have a material change in circumstances, and certainly neglect of a child's medical needs is a material change in circumstances. So you're going to want to, especially since you probably have joint legal custody, you're going to want to be gathering the medical records, showing the lack of attention that the other parent is giving to the child's needs, dental records to showing the lack of attention the child is getting there. You're going to also have wanted to, along the way, document the attempts that you have made to either take the child to the doctor yourself or to have the other parent take that child to the doctor. This documentation is going to be really helpful so that it doesn't turn into a he said, she said, or she said, he said, in determining is there neglect or is there not neglect. Certainly, not taking the child to their regular dental appointments, not doing any checkups with a child, or ignoring something like even a skin disorder like eczema can be very disturbing to a child if it's being ignored. So you definitely want to talk to an attorney, explain your situation to that attorney, have them walk you through what documentation you need in your particular case, because it could be it's psychological neglect, right? It could be that a child really needs therapy and they're not getting it. So each case is different, but that documentation is what is essential.
So big takeaway here is that if you do have medical decision-making right over your child and you do not want to vaccinate your child with the COVID-19 vaccine, even though the American Academy of Pediatrics has come out and recommended it for children over the ages of 5 and up, that decision alone is most likely not enough for you to lose your medical decision-making rights over your child. You should, however, communicate that decision with your ex-spouse, with the co-parent, that for these reasons, I feel this way, I am making this decision. What do you think? Just like Shawna taught us, if you have the medical decision-making right over your child and you want to vaccinate your child, again, communicate, express in good faith why you're making this decision, whether the pediatrician recommended it. I've looked at these studies. I've seen the American Academy of Pediatricians make this recommendation. I'm going ahead and do this. What do you think? I think that's the safest way for either party to not get themselves into any litigation and keep not let this COVID-19 vaccine come and go and polarize the parents as it might have already done so much to our culture and society currently. Shawna, is there anything else that we should take away from this?
I really think that the key part to this is the communication. Communication is the most important part of being in a good co-parenting relationship, and it's really best for your children.
Absolutely. Well, Shawna, thank you so much, and we will join again soon.
Bye-bye.